Okay, so Mike, we'll talk about your mail guide in 1 second, but I'll just announce that Mike and I are sort of joining forces in a way. So Mike will continue, unless he says something else, developing dichotomous keys, which is a really, again, a valuable way to do identifications and provides what you want, which is more than one avenue to the answer, discover life. And then I just realized, like, why can't we just include Mike's couplets and put them into discover life formatting and just put them right into the guide, so now you'll have more choices. So you guys got sent out the first 3 that we worked on, and basically it's just a pretty straightforward rewording of what Mike has. And you'll see the document, and it will see Mike's original wording is in black and my proposed discover life level wording in blue. And the email explains some of that. So if you have any comments, let us know. Otherwise, we're going to just proceed to start putting them into the guides. Then we'll put out another announcement, probably to both to you guys and to the bee monitoring listserv, to let people know what we're doing and see if there's more feedback. Just a note, as always, we can go in, and Mike can too. If you see something that's outright wrong or just like hard to understand, we're both happy to modify our our guides, and we're constantly tweaking them. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike, comments on that, and then comments on what we just sent out in terms of the mail guide for Megachile.
Yeah, there are a few of those of the keys I have that like Anthidiellum, that's considered boreale and notatum as 2 separate species. And then Dianthidium curvatum and simile as one and the same. And that's not really formally published, yes, but I think you and I agree on that, I think, Sam.
Yeah.
And the data is pretty strong. It's just not formally out there. So.
Yep. And then, so your mail guide is that you sent out is partially done.
Right. It's half done, half typed in. Let me put it that way. Yeah. And the groups that are included right now in it are all those that have 4 coxal spines and modified 4 basotarsi.
Yeah. So
that's about half of them in the east. And
that's way more than we can cover anyway.
I know.
So it's a good start, and you guys have copies, and give Mike feedback.
And I will say one thing about almost all of those keys that I've done. The Florida fauna is not well represented. So there are certain things in Florida that aren't anywhere else, or maybe they are, we just don't know it yet. Yep. But some, like Megachile lanata, I think that's not in my key. Those so.
Integrella, maybe.
Yeah, right. So most of the eastern fauna is, but not every single one of them.
But see, that's the kind of, in some ways, it's nice, like in the Discover Life, they don't all have to be in there. We're mostly dealing with sets of couplets, and they don't have to be completely scored for everything in order for us to keep adding information to the identification guides. So I think we're in good shape, and I wish I really had started this earlier. And after we kind of get through Mike's information, we'll start looking at additional guides, published ones. And if any of you have suggestions on what would be nice to include within Discover Life as additional couplets, again, redundancy is fine. Like, that's the thing. You can choose what you use. And in fact, you can try multiple avenues and see if you come up. You're essentially recreating guides. See if you come up with the same answer. And then you always have the option of using a straight dichotomous key with Mike's. But like today, you'll see Mike's approaches are actually quite different from the ones on the Discover Life keys. He's using a lot of characters on the legs, which we largely are not in large ways. So that's Well, that's what makes it all very fun.
Yeah,
So,
Megachile
yeah.
males in particular are so have such a diverse morphology that it's hard what to pick. I mean, some of those males are just so fantastically morphologically equipped that it's almost confusing to first look at one because you don't know where to look. There's so much stuff everywhere.
Yeah. So I'm going to share the screen here, and then we'll go to Mike's guide, and then we are going to mostly use Mike's guide today, and we will illustrate. I'll pull up illustrations sort of as usual on the microscope. So, Mike, why don't you just step through the first couplet? I think we've covered this before, but it's always good to have your take on things.
Yeah, the males of a large number of Megachile have on the anterior face of the forecoxa or the procoxa some sort of spine or projection or triangle. It varies, but it's usually quite conspicuous. Now if the legs are folded up against the coxa or...
Hey, Sam, I'm sorry, Mike. You
Sure,
have
yeah.
a little notification open in the bottom right of your screen.
Oh, from who is that person?
I know, weird.
Let's see if I can get rid of it. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna delete it. It doesn't want to. You may be stuck, Claire, on the screen. Let me go.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, just transition to another screen and then pop back.
Yeah,
in.
usually those disappear. These little pop-ups here.
Yeah,
But
sorry.
dismiss.
You can delete it.
Yeah,
there we go.
Okay. All right, now we're back, and here's the spine
Sorry,
Mike
Mike
was talking
Oh,
about.
that's all right, no problem. In a few species, there's a lot of hair on the front coxa, and in a couple of those, like Parallella and one or two others, so there's enough hair that if you're not looking carefully, you might miss those spines. But the vast majority, they're quite distinctive and quite obvious. It's hard to miss them.
Yeah, and here's just an example with someone else's specimen that I have labeled albitarsis. So hopefully it is. We'll find out. Okay, so going back to Mike's guide, so that takes us to where we're going today. All these have spines. The ones that don't have spines, I believe, are all the resin Megachile with no cutting teeth, right, Mike?
And some others.
There are some additional ones.
Yeah, like Relatiba and Suntuncularis and Ermis. Those males,
okay.
They don't have spines.
All right.
So the second couplet, number 2, this is doesn't sound tricky, but it kind of is. There's some Megachile males that have apical spurs, and a single apical spur, and some that don't. But almost all of them, in almost all of them, the spur is pale. It's not a bold thing sticking out, and it could be kind of nestled in some pubescence. So if you're not looking carefully, and depending on how the legs are positioned, you can think a specimen doesn't have mid-apical spur on the mid-tibia. So you just need to look carefully for that one.
All right, so here is albitarsis, and so we were looking at the forecoxa spurs here, and this is the mid-coxal area that I'm looking at here? Yeah, right, okay. Let's get this oriented a little bit differently. So theoretically, this is one that should not.
Right.
Again,
albitarsis males don't have a mid-tibial spur.
So here is the middle leg coming in, and this should be the coxa here. Do I have that right?
I think.
Yeah, and there's nothing going on there. So we'll swap this out now, and we'll return to this because we're going to talk about albitarsis, and I'll get a one of the others that does have, the bulk that does. This is a new character for me because I've never used this before. With does have that. So we're going to 6 And we have quite a selection here. And let me just pull one. Probably I'll pull gemula. So Mike, are you finding these things basically by just looking at gobs of these specimens, or?
Well, it's a little bit of both.
Mitchell
Mitchell,
mentioned.
yeah, that's the mid-tibial spurs are something that have always been used with Megachile. It's just a way of breaking, one group out from another. Yeah. And I almost didn't use it because they can be tricky to see sometimes, but I put it in there and just see what happens.
Yeah.
But it's a traditional morphological character in male Megachile.
All right, so let's get oriented here. So we have a gemula, and we're looking sort of straight down. Here's the front leg. There's one of the spurs on the front coxa. Now our goal is to hone in. I think this is the let's back out here for a second and just orient.
Yeah, we want to look at the apex of the mid tibia.
Okay. And we may have to disarticulate this a little bit. So there's a lot going on here underneath. So this, okay, so here is a leg, but this is the foreleg.
Yep.
And it should be going down to here, and there should be a spur. That's not the spur. I was incorrect about that. And for whatever reason, I don't really see the spurs on here. This may be a bad specimen.
I think it is. I think things are pretty. I don't even see the mid tibia. I'm sure it's in there somewhere, but
yeah. I mean, here's 1, 2, 3 on this side, so you can't see down far enough. Okay, I'm going to say we will, as we go through, we'll look for specimens that have good views in there. But this is also a good way to note that, yeah, it's really nice when all the specimens are spread out. The legs are spread out and things, which which rarely is done.
And I confess those are the kind of specimens I use to develop the keys. So, be warned.
Right. And so it's good, but also, within the Discover Life framework, you have alternatives. You can't see it. You just do a different
move on
character. Yep. And this points out some of the issues you're confronted with, like, oh, I've got a couplet here that's separating out a couple big chunks, but if I can't see what's going on in the mid tibia, then now I'm in a hard place. But if you can, because you have really nice specimens, then this is a relatively straightforward thing. So we'll return to that. But maybe we can take a look at this set here. So these are things without mid tibia, without apical spur. And I think xylocopoides we've spoken about before, super straightforward. I'll throw a specimen under there while Mike is talking.
Yeah, this is an interesting species because up until recently, there were no records of this bee in the Midwest. And when I first started collecting bees in the Midwest, I just totally glossed over this thing. I knew it would never be here. Well, it is here. And we keep finding it further and further north in Missouri every year. And even now into southern Iowa. And there are just no historical records of this. And this bee is so obvious, so conspicuous, it's hard to believe that it wasn't found in places if it had been there. So If I remember right, Sam, you could say this same thing is happening on the East Coast. It seems
Yeah.
to be moving. Yeah.
When we started out, there were no records for Maryland. So we got the, first records. Then now I've got them in my backyard. So they're very relatively abundant, super obvious. And everyone's seeing them. They work composites pretty much only.
Yeah.
And I know they're in New Jersey. I wouldn't be surprised if they're in, Long Island. I don't know for sure. Someone could look that up.
So it's a curious thing. This is a bee that's, for whatever reason, it's moving north, and it's a cavity nester. So there's always that possibility that it's being moved by us. But there are a lot of other cavity nesters that aren't moving north. So it's a kind of an interesting situation.
Right. And it's a little bit odd because I would say that in general, composites are less common these days than in the past because we're mowing everything all the time. But yet, here they are. So it could be gardens as an important aspect of that. So Mike mentioned, I think, I'm remembering a couple of these large teeth, and this is a good review, on the true rim. So what you're looking at.
Not on they're on the, unless I mistyped it, it's on the preapical carina.
Okay, yeah, so here's the notch in the preapical carina and things that are tooth-like there. And I guess there's either nothing here on the true rim or perhaps a couple very shallow. We were talking last time about the difficulty in seeing these things. There might be some lateral teeth in there, but it looks to me pretty darn smooth.
Yeah, there's not much sticking out. Yeah.
Yeah.
But those two projections pretty obvious and stick out.
So under normal circumstances, the overall frame of that segment is just a simple, half circle with a notch cut out of it. And here you've got the different thing is the teeth, but it's you almost have to just look at this specimen to understand what it is.
And they show up well in dorsal view as well. You don't have to turn the bee over to see them. So they're that conspicuous. Yeah.
So here's another thing. A lot of times, so Mike is mentioning here mid-basal tarsi, long and narrow, and the Mike, you can talk about this, but there's quite a range, and sometimes super useful the comparison of basotarsi in these species.
Totally. Yeah, and in xylocopoides, the males, it's the mid-basal tarsi is really long and narrow, and especially when it's compared to those species that follow in the next two couplets, albitaris and Herrera and latimanus have a very compact mid-basal tarsus compared to xylocopoides, which has a very long and slightly curved one.
Yeah. So again, we have the jumble going on. So here the four tarsi, the front legs, really expanded, super obvious, very pale, in fact, blown out by the light here. And then if we move back, we now have to disentangle the hind legs from the middle legs. So this is almost certainly, I would say, the hind leg. And here's the middle one arching over like this to right in that area. Let's get that a little bit more in focus. And that might be another. So there's two. This is, I think, the rear part of it here, but
and then you've got the hind leg above it. You can see the hind basal tarsus is flattened and kind of abbreviated and short compared to the mid.
Yeah. So I'm gonna spin the whole specimen and see if we can get a slightly better look at that. Looks pretty darn. Is that the same view? Did I just spin it 100?
Pretty much, but that's pretty obvious.
Yeah. Yep. So this is probably the mid-basotarsus right here with the,
I think so.
yeah, with the long, the middle leg, tibia, and then the basotarsus. Okay, and now we can shift, and we'll look to albitarsus, I believe, has the thicker. So here you have without the triangular teeth on the that projecting margin, and the mid-basotarsus much enlarged, nearly as broad, about as broad as long. So let's see if we can check that out there with our albitarsus, who has lost its abdomen, but it's glued down. So, Mike, what do you do when you lose a body part? Where do you put that?
Well, if I can reattach it somewhere on the pin or on the specimen without making a bigger mess, I'll do that. But again,
you'll actually put it onto the specimen?
Well, only if I can do that without making a bigger mess. Usually I put it on the pin or on another piece of paper or something. But the good thing is, these are bilaterally symmetric critters. So if you lose one leg, you got another one. So I don't worry too much about it. If it's genitalia or something, that's different. But if a leg's missing or an antenna's missing, I don't get too upset about that because there's another one.
All right. So this is actually pretty convenient because these legs are spread out. So here's the hind leg. Here is the foreleg, the mid leg. And I'm going to jump up to get knock the light level back a little bit. And so you can see here.
I think you're looking at the front leg, I think, Sam.
Am I looking at the front leg?
It looked like that.
Oh, is the hind legs are completely gone? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so there are the spurs.
Yep.
Right. Oh, and there's the coxa. Okay. So so here is very nicely in this particular case showing the, basically very broad, very different from the other one, very broad basotarsus.
And the color is another color of the basotarsi of all the legs is important because in a lot of cases, the mid and hind tarsi are dark, but albitarsus and a few others have everything is bright yellow. So the hind tarsi, the mid tarsi, and the front tarsi are all bright yellow in albitarsi, which is pretty unusual. Really.
And befitting its name.
Yeah, exactly. And there's another interesting character on albitarsi. The mid-coxi have spines ventrally, which again is pretty unusual. There's only one other species in our fauna like that. And
I think we can actually see that here.
Yeah, they're there. There's one of them sticking up.
Yeah.
And they're not huge, but they're pretty obvious. And then all the other species, those mid-coxi ventrally, there's nothing going on. They don't have angles or anything. So these spines on albitarsi are fairly unique in the eastern fauna.
Again, pointing out that if you have a specimen that is where all the legs are curled over, you're going to have a rough time finding these things. And that's probably why I have just ignored all these leg things over the years. But it's good to have this in here because not everyone has junky specimens, and it is encouraged. It's just a time thing. So yeah, I can't really see it. I was trying to see if, I guess it's vaguely here on the other one, but you can't really see it close enough. All right.
So how common is albitarsus on the East Coast?
You have to go way south to get it. Like we have no records for Maryland, and then down there, my impression is pretty regular. Like it's a common species of the region. All right, so tarsal segments of all like bright yellow, mandibles with 4 teeth, and central and southern parts. Okay, and then so the next one down, this is going to get us to Latimanus, which have some really, basic plumage differences that are very helpful, and that's often how you key them out within Discover Life, because the abdomen is very much, I think, all pale hairs. But in this key, you have the simple mid-coxy, and the tarsal segments are dark rather than the light that we have. I don't know that we need to see that. And mandible with 3 teeth, I think people know how to do that one too. But it's a lot of these coxal characteristics get to be tricky. Anything more on Latimanus or albitarsus before I put this away?
No, I'm over where you are. Paraherta isn't likely, but on the western edge of the Midwest, it's one of those things that we keep looking for. The females of those 2 species, Latimanus and Paraherta, I can't tell them apart with any reliability, but the males you can. So we keep looking, but I'm not aware of any recent Paraherta records in the Midwest.
Oh, you know what? I'm going to remove, carefully pull back, and actually we were looking at the hind leg, which also has that little spur, but there's a big old spur that's really easy to see here on the mid coxa. I had to look on my other mic. It's hard to look at this under. This is the problem we're both having, is looking at this thing under the camera is way different than elsewhere.
Yeah,
so actually here's one of the front legs, and then the other 2 are present, although it's just pretty obscured. And you can even see the spine from here. And we'll just zoom in a little bit better. And the other one the hind one has a very tiny spur, but so here, see this spur right there, very dramatic on the mid. So we were looking over here and trying to pull it out of that, and we did. There's a little one, but if you look here, you can see that the spur is pretty obvious. And you can look on the other side too. So here's the spur here, and here's the spur, not in focus, over here. So there you go. Just to see more of those kinds of things. And we will put this one away. All right, so we'll go back to the guide here. So that's that group there. So these are the ones that lack the apical spur on the mid tibia. And if we go, which we could have looked at, but it just doesn't have a spur on the mid tibia. And then now we get here, and we have another big split. And Mike, you want to talk about that while I try and get some bees to look at.
The couplet 6, the first alternative refers to the 4 basotarsi of many of these male Megachile, and it's one of those structures it's kind of hard to explain, because it's 3-dimensional, and it's got so many things involved with it that people have used different terminology to explain it. So what I've done is just the 4 basotarsi. We know what that is, but in this group of Megachile we're going to look at next, it's the 4 basotarsi is elaborated, and on what to me is the inner margin, there's several things happening. At one extreme, and there's this almost like a taco-shaped structure, but it's folded. And then at the other extreme, it's a little more mild, the inner surface is just concave, sometimes deeply, sometimes weakly. So that's what you're looking for. You're looking basically the 4 basotarsi and then on its inner margin. And this structure, again, is so complicated that what's inner and what's ventral sometimes is a little confusing.
Sometimes you have to, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a dramatic structure. Some of these things, like Polycaris and a few others, they're just beautiful. And that's perfect. Sam's got a great shot. So that's what you're looking for. That's the taco.
Yeah, and usually very wide. So this is, I'm trying to get the shot underneath. And here is what we were talking about the other day.
Oh,
this
the stridulus.
Yeah, the stridulus. Yeah. And so you want to talk velum and stridulus and points and blunts and things because they can be useful, but I think it bears repeating.
Yeah, the stridulus. Oh, that's good. That's good. That's real good. Or sometimes called the antennal cleaner, is something males and females have, and it's always, as far as I know, at least in these in North America anyway, it's at the end, the apex of the front tibia, and it takes various forms. It's usually relatively narrow and pointed, but there's another part of it. There's a structure called the velum, which is usually a translucent wing or plate that comes down from the dark spine-like thing that's called the malleus that Sam's showing. But it varies in different groups and in different species, and because of that, it can be useful. Like, any of the spines that are on legs, it sometimes can be hard to get a good, clear look at. But we're going to revisit this further down the road in Megachile males. It becomes a good way to separate Relatiba and Centuncularis and some others. So that's the stridulus. The main dark part is called the malleus, and it often is, there's a malar spine like you're seeing here. And then sometimes below it, there's the transparent or translucent velum.
Hey, could you do a favor? We're asking in the chat if you could spell the name of this antennal cleaning structure, as it's not really in many glossaries. And while I have the mic, I'll also just direct people to chat if you are interested in a conversation about other ways of storing fallen body parts.
So yeah, stridulus, Strigilis, Strigilis, I think. And then the other two components of that are the malleus, which is Malus, or the malar spine, and then the velum, which is Velum. And that's the transparent wing that often, but not always, is attached as part of the whole structure.
So Mike, here is just
oh yeah, there we go.
There's this black dot that is like, hey, that's a great character. And you said there was one other species. This is inimica, by the way.
There are many. When I started looking after you mentioned that, I thought, oh, let's look and see. And there are at least a half a dozen.
Oh, there are. Okay.
That have that, which makes you wonder. They must have. It obviously has some use. These modified front legs are put over when the males are mating with the females. Those front legs are put over the eyes, and when you look at the total shape of the undersurface of those modified forelegs, I mean, they perfectly fit the slope of the compound eye. And I don't know what's going on, but I've seen males, the Letomanus, mating with the females, and they move them over the eyes. So I don't know. Pretty amazing.
So here we're looking at, this is the other leg there, sort of in the way, but here's the underside of that foreleg and the fringe. So Mike, you want to take us through? So is it the combination of fringe or the because a lot of other species don't have a fringe at all, if I remember right?
Most of them do.
Okay.
To a greater or lesser degree. But yeah, that whole four basotarsi structure in many of these species involves not just the basotarsus, but following tarsal segments as well. And this is a good case of that. That black dot that you see is on the second tarsomere. So that's the second tarsal segment of the front tarsi. And then following that is the third. So in this case, you know, all three of those segments are broadened and expanded. So there are 5 total tarsal segments that you can, you know, and 1, 2, and 3 are modified. And that's typical of, not of all of them, but of many of the other species that have these modified front legs. That it's not just the basotarsi that's modified, although it's usually the most conspicuous part, but so are some of the other tarsal segments are modified in different ways also. So that black dot, it's interesting, there are hairs all around it, but the dot itself, I mean, there aren't any hairs unless they are super microscopic. So I don't, you know, I'm really curious what the function of that dot is, because something's going on there.
Right, that is kind of interesting. Like, why black? Why no hairs? And so the rest of this though would be relatively translucent. So I'm just thinking, okay, it's over the eye.
No,
this would maybe not let light in, or is everything opaque?
It's to me, it's the integument's colored, so it's either yellow or brownish, not translucent, at least not to my eye.
Right. But if you were a female, okay, and so the 4 tarsi come over, that black area here is going to be in your visual space quite a bit. I wonder if that does something. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that at all.
We have a hypothesis in the chat. It might function as a focal point.
Oh, right, but why? Why would it?
Maybe it hypnotizes.
I was gonna say it's like a mesmerization.
Makes her docile.
All right. Well,
so there might be literature on this. I can't recall, but I think I remember some old world publications. Their old world species have a similar. The males have similar legs, and I'm gonna have to dig into that. I can't remember.
Okay, so if we're back now on the guide, so here, and we're looking at inimica in this case, you have, and it's hard to see, but that's deeply concave. Obviously, if it's going over the female's eyes, it would need to be, and we saw the fringe, and it was definitely yellowish, which is more obvious on the dorsal or outer side, if you want to call it, too. Right. So let's see.
I'm going to interrupt again. I'm going to backtrack. A few of us were too invested in the chat and missed what species you were just talking about.
Oh, that
was with the black dot, Latimanus?
No, inimica.
Inimica, okay. And is that character, doesn't look like it's actually in a key, but you said it was a unique thing to just that species?
Well, I actually put it in and I was wrong. This is where we ended last time. I thought it was, I had gotten georgica and inimica mixed up and thought that it was a good character for georgica, which is we'll see, is completely dark. And in fact, I don't know why I was thinking that, because the collection was correctly split, but for some reason I put in that georgica had the dot, and that was a good way to separate it from something else. But it turns out, as often is the case, I was incorrect at some kind of level. But let's go to georgica, and we will take a look at a different front leg architecture. And while I'm doing that, Mike, if you have anything else to add, that's totally good.
Yeah, the black dots occur frequently enough in species that I don't think I've included it in the key, but inimica, pollicaris, pugnata, and several others have what you and I would call a black dot on the second foretarsal segment. Sometimes not quite as obvious as the one that Sam was showing, but I think we'd all agree that it was present. So it's going to be useful in certain circumstances, but as a single identifying character that's useful in singling out one species, it's, in and of itself, it's not that useful. But it's very interesting for other reasons.
Right. So many little interesting things. I just feel like I'm just kind of in some ways shocked that that people are listening to us. I always feel like, well, there's like 3 people who care about these details. But then again, they do care about getting their darn things identified. All right, so hopefully I've got a, let me just look at it here. A georgica. This is, let me get a different specimen. It's, I can't, I'm trying to find it so that we can look at the underside. Oh, this is a better one. Oh, look, there's a black dot. So
Georgica is one of those that in couplet 6 is involved in the second choice in the couplet. It doesn't have a modified 4 basotarsi the way that inimica does.
So I'll try and show underneath. Yeah, so maybe the black dot thing, you're right, is probably more ubiquitous than I thought. And georgica does have it. You just have to look underneath again. Darn, it's tricky to get a picture of this. I mean, let's just start by looking at the outer edge, and then I'll try and angle this to see the inner edge, so that you can see it's just doesn't have the same expansion of the 4 tarsi that those other specimens had. Okay, so this is just the outer edge. I'm going to work on the light here. Take the light down a little bit. And yeah, that's a little bit better. So you see it's much narrower. And now we'll try and flip it over. All right, if I'm good at angling this thing. There we go.
Yeah, I think you got it.
Yeah. And it also has a black dot.
Also on the on the second tarsum here, which is that's where it always is, which is also interesting. Why is it always on that one? You know.
Does it have hair in it?
Nope. And if there are hairs, they are microscopic, and there could be. You know, it's just that at 80x I couldn't see anything, no matter how I changed the light. So
it's more like almost like a fovea kind of thing,
yeah,
possibly.
Yeah.
Which is also mysterious as to what's going on there. So anything you want to say, Mike, now that we have that in there? I'm gonna.
Yeah. So this is a case of one of a group of species, of which there are many, that don't have the 4 basotarsi concave or folded or with a deep impression. You may have other things, but they don't have what you saw in inimica.
Yeah, so we approach it in the Discover Life keys. Let me try and bump this back up. Basically, because most of the time it's difficult to see underneath. We're just asking people to measure the width across and compare it to the tibia to get an idea of whether the segment's been expanded or not. And then we have a color, yellow, not yellow, on that. But the idea is the same. Very intriguing black dot. So yeah, just a different way of saying similar things. All right, so yeah, without this concavity, and the four tarsi usually dark in color. So if we take a look at this, we back this off, we're not seeing this bright yellow part to it. And, you know, the tibia is, well, I guess it's supposedly in the other ones, the tibia could also be brown, but this is mostly dark segment. There's bright white hairs here, which are sort of disguising the dark under the integument is the same color as this. The hairs are disguising it, whereas when we were looking at the other specimen, this was all bright yellow, and this was much whiter, and there were flaps and folds and all kinds of interesting things. All right, so that's a big split in Mike's key here between two separate groups. So we'll, in just keeping with our number thing, so I don't have any comata. Do you want to talk about, or how you even pronounce it, that particular species? It must be a Western.
It is. Arkansas is the furthest east record I know of. It's mostly a Western and Great Plains thing. It's big. It's a big, very big species. And the spines on the mid-coxy are like 5 times what they were on albitaris. I mean, they're just these incredible spines sticking out of the mid-coxy. But again, this is, I mean, there are only a few records on the western edge of the Midwest, the southern margin, and I don't think there are any records, you know, over in the east. But it's a real big, I mean, it's a big bee.
Right. And just that mid-coxal thing, if you can see it, is splitting out from all the rest.
And the spines in this case are, I mean, they are really, you can't miss them. I mean, they stick way out.
And 15 millimeters is also a pretty huge bee too, so the whole thing would be noticeable.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so now we're splitting again 9 and 12. So what are we looking at here?
The T6, not the true apical margin, but what I just call the preapical carina, which all the males have. And sometimes it's got a notch, sometimes it's serrated, sometimes it's in 2 pieces. But what we're looking for here are those males that the T6 carina has no notches. It's pretty much evenly, or what we call entire across the margin. And there's a handful of species that fit that in the east. Far more of them out west, but there's some in the east.
We looked at ruby, because that's the specimen I have, that you don't have it because it's basically a deep south east coast thing. But I don't think I have, I'm pretty sure I don't have any of these. These are all really rare bees. Let me ask you about Enitherae. How many have you seen of that species?
A handful.
Oh, you have seen them though. Okay.
Yeah, I collected them in Oklahoma. And there are records from the south, the Gulf Coast. And I think it's one of those that's maybe more around than we think.
Yeah.
I've seen them early in the morning. They're fast, incredibly fast. But they are very distinctive. They have a tongue that's unbelievable.
Right.
You can't miss it because it has nowhere to go. It's always hanging out. And so it's very obvious. Any Megachile, east of the Great Plain, east of the Rocky Mountains, that has a super long tongue, it's going to be Enitherae or something undescribed, maybe.
Yeah.
So it's a very cool bee. And then Amica is another. That's also a Great Plains thing, and it looks just like Enitherae mostly, but with a short tongue.
On Enitherae, that's a specialist, right?
Totally. Yes.
Yeah. It's going with the morning glories and that family.
No, with evening primrose family.
Yeah.
I was going to ask which species of evening primrose.
I've found it at several. Actually, one of them it's Callilophus, genus Callilophus. That was in that might now be moved into Enitherae. But
Okay.
it's several.
Yeah, and that's a Western, that
It
one you
is.
just mentioned is a Western thing in deserts almost. Okay. All right.
And
Yeah,
I also want to read from Jean, our local librarian. Mishner says, enlarged, often elaborately fringed front tarsi, pale and sometimes translucent, but often having dark spots on the concave inner surfaces. These may possibly fit over the eyes of the female during mating.
yes. But the dark spot was sort of an aside. It didn't, you know what I mean? Like the dark spot, I don't think can fit over the eyes. That would only be part of the eyes. It certainly would be over the eyes, but like, so, and the interesting thing is that georgica, which doesn't have like the massive, like the other ones I think of as completely covering the compound eyes, or nearly so. And so you can make up a story about that, but georgica, that's not completely covering, but yet that black spot is almost the same size.
In the same place.
Yeah, in the same place.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem to require something like complete coverage. And I don't know how georgica mates, or
I don't even,
you know,
that's what I was just going to
whether
say.
it's,
Do we even know if it does the same blindfold thing?
right, or maybe it's a lure, you know, like it's like, hey, watch my dot or something. I don't know, but it's interesting that both the, you know, the two different types of forelegs both had black dots. I think someone should do a black dot comparison paper and then look at other patterns associated with black dots or not. But
and maybe ultraviolet light, or maybe it does something, you know, maybe it looks black to us, but maybe not to a bee.
Right. Yeah. Well.
So I want to say one other thing, that the question that somebody had about the morning glories and Megachile theory. There is another genus in a different family, Melatoma, and they are specialists on apomia and things in that family. And they have a super long tongue, just as long as Megachile theory, but they're totally different bees.
Right, but
I think that's
Sima lobus, yeah. No, they do. I mean, their
Yeah.
tongue is massive, but
Yeah,
Sima lobus does not, if I remember right, have a very long tongue, yet it is more than Melatoma, I would say, locked into apparently Ipomea pandurata only.
I agree. Yep, I agree.
And it's big, and it must just jam in there or something. There's another interesting one, and hardly ever seen. Although I did see a bunch, also new state records for Pennsylvania. That paper that Nash was talking about. I looked at Dave Bittinger's first captures, tons of really interesting, all the Anthophora, and a bunch of usurines, including, if you think of it as a usurine, these Sima lobus. And I'm like, I'm seeing more Sima lobus than I have ever seen recently. And it's like in freaking Pennsylvania. So anyway, just continuous mysteries out there. So okay, if we go back to this split here, mid-coxal spines absent, 8, and then here's a split. T6 with pre-apical carina with the notch. So basically what we've been seeing mostly, which is there's a big notch out of the middle, sometimes very not so notch as just toothed, heavily toothed, and mandible with 3 or 4 teeth. So that takes us to 12. Yeah.
Time really flies. We got 2 minutes, and it's probably a better stopping point at a big split.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay. Great. It is another split here. Okay. Well, I guess we've covered some interesting things. Are there other questions that we can answer, or anything more about any of this stuff? Oh, here's Pruina. Just, Mike, did I tell you about this study
Well, you did copy me on that, and
Okay.
yeah, it was intriguing.
Yeah. So
I want to know more.
So the story is, and this is the thing where someone needs to go to Bermuda. First of all, I can't believe that only Pruina is the only native bee there. I'm sure they have honeybees. I mean, by now something should have at least invaded, but theoretically that's the only bee of Bermuda, which is quite a distance from anything. So that kind of makes sense. And Pruina is, in my experience, is absolutely coastal.
Yeah.
There are some weird specimens from the interior, but I don't actually know anyone who has looked at them recently.
Nope.
And so I'm a little suspicious because they don't even seem to be in sand. And this is definitely a dune bee. And also in Bermuda, it is a dune bee, but it turns out when they do the molecular, not Pruina, some new species. So, but it was like, I should go to Bermuda just because I know I can find some additional bees there, some, little lazy blossom or something. But on the other hand, if you actually look on Google Earth at Bermuda, it's like used up.
Oh.
It's like 100% housing development or something close to it, which isn't necessarily mean there are no other bees, but I'm just like, come on, there's got to be another bee there. Anyway, it was just a fun side story. And they also looked at the color so there's these color variations from very light, sort of like a normal Megachile, to almost completely black. And they said there was no molecular note to those differences in color variations, just color variation.
Yeah.
And plenty of bees do that similar. Yeah. All right.
Well,
so
we do have another specialist question, and I also just wanted to point people to the chat if you were interested in Ellen using capsules to store spared body parts. But someone asked, are Megachile owner, I don't know how to pronounce it, evening foraging bee, that genus being evening primroses?
Oh, the Enitheri?
Yeah.
So what was the question?
Are they an evening foraging bee?
The ones I have found are morning.
Yeah.
But there are there are evening primrose species that, I mean, it's a huge group. Some of them open in early in the morning, some are in the evening, some are later in the day. So, we don't know enough about this bee to really answer that question. It's really, it's just a poorly known species.
Yeah.
I think that was the essence.
I have the super common evening primrose in my yard. What is that, Biennis or something?
Mm-hmm.
But I was just noticing this morning, right at dawn, I'm looking at like, oh, you're still open. And because normally they're mostly closed throughout almost all of the day and then open up in the evening as per its name. But it was like, all right, you're completely open. I did a quick scan because there's other Sphacotogastra type species, at least, well, one that could be in the area, but I didn't see it. But that species is on evening primrose, but also on the day blooming Enithera too. And other people have found them. I've seen them in bowls a couple times, but actually have never, I've had tons of evening primrose and I've never seen one in my yard. It's irritating. So anyway.
Yeah, I think that gets to the essence of the question, the degree of specialization on that one.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a bunch, there's a Savastra that's a specialist. There's a Megachile that's a specialist. There's lazy glossums, very different groups. In fact, those are 3 different families that have honed in on being a specialist of Enithera plants. And they're super sticky. The pollen is connected. They're weird shapes. They're like 3-cornered, and then they're I think the main problem for bees is that they're all glued together with byssal threads, I guess they're called. So probably it's like the plant is like, okay, only my favorites really are gonna move my pollen around because it's such a pain in the butt.
That's very cool. Okay, well, I'm gonna wrap it up, and I'll let you all know if I get any emails about this, but we don't have any other comments in the chat unless anybody wants to jump in.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Claire. Appreciate it.
Cool.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you very much, Claire. Thanks,
And
Sam.
we'll put up the I'll look for some comments today, and then maybe over the weekend I'll put up some of the new questions right into the guides and see how that goes.